If you have said to yourself, I should write that, or if someone has said to you, you should write that, then I'm talking to you because you need to write. And that's why you're tuned in to yWrite. Hi, welcome to yWrite. I'm your host, Angela Grout, and I thank you for tuning in to another episode to learn what writers are writing, why they're writing, and hopefully to inspire you to write your story too. Today I'm in studio and I have Susan Michel with me, and Susan is a spiritual speaker and author. She has been teaching and studying the Course of Miracles for over 30 years, and she has written a book called Surrender to Joy. Don't we all need to do that, to surrender to joy? We're going to talk to her about writing her book and how her mission to help others find joy in their lives is how that came about and how she is spreading that word. She has been featured and her teachings on Fox, CBS, ABC, NBC, and Yahoo Finance. She has a very unique life experience, which has made her a survivor. Well, I'll call it a warrior. And she's become an inspirational woman who has authored this spiritual self-help book. So maybe you have a spiritual self-help book in you, and maybe you need to read this to find out exactly what she has survived from. And we're going to find out right now. So I want to welcome to the show, Susan Michel.
Hi, Angela. It's so great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, thank you. It was wonderful. You know, I met you a few weeks ago. We were talking about your book, and of course, book titles are, the first thing that sells a book. And you see Surrender to Joy, and it's like, yeah, we all need to surrender to joy because sometimes we surrender to the chaos in our life and the darkness in our life. And looking for the little joyful moments, sometimes is as simple as, the sun rose today. So this is a memoir.
It is, yes.
It is a memoir. And how long ago did you write this? How long did it take you to write this?
I started writing about 15 years ago, and I kind of went through spurts. I wrote off and on over the course of 15 years.
Yeah.
So I really learned what I was writing. For me, A Course in Miracles is all about the Surrender to Joy book, I should say, is all about A Course in Miracles, which has been my course of study over the past 30 years. Yeah. So my mission of my book, Surrender to Joy, was to explain the text of A Course in Miracles, which is the first book that ever brought peace, love, joy, and happiness to my life.
Yeah, okay, let's show it. In case you don't know what Course in Miracles is, we're going to show you this book because this book came to me about 35 years ago also. And I do think it's a book that kind of finds you in your journey. And I had a girlfriend who had a very traumatic event. She was stabbed 19 times and left for dead. She has survived, and I do attribute a lot of her survival to the Course in Miracles. That book literally being dropped in my lap around that time. It is a piece of the Christian teaching, that gives us our faith, our spirituality, and guides us to live good lives, to find joy. Now, when you first you didn't set off to be an author.
I did not.
And
no.
I'm going to jump right into, the whole purpose of when you ended up writing your book, because you had a very dark time in your life. And you're a survivor of suicide.
Correct. I attempted the suicide 5 years before I found A Course in Miracles. And a lot went into the reason that I attempted suicide. I attempted suicide twice. Basically, as a child, I had a dysfunctional family, just like a lot of other people I know. My father was verbally and emotionally abusive. In school, I was extremely shy. I was afraid of all the other students. I was afraid to speak. I walked through the hallway with my shoulders slumped over, my head down, my arms up, protecting myself. And because of my odd behavior, the other children made fun of me. So I was bullied before bullied became popular, before people even knew what bullying was. I was bullied. So this difficult child, and I always felt like an outsider. I remember every recess I was alone on the playground, watching all the other children play. I felt like a misfit. And, this in combination with my dysfunctional family life is what led to the suicide attempts. The main problem in my family, there was verbal abuse, there was emotional abuse, but the main problem was my parents did not allow me to feel feelings. And I strongly believe that it is so important for us to feel the negative, painful feelings, because when we don't allow ourselves to feel them, they get stuffed in our unconscious mind and they end up guiding our life. This is why we feel disconnected from other people, because the feelings that we're too afraid to feel block our joy.
Is it feeling them and voicing them, or just the feeling? You know what I mean? Like, because I can see how your family didn't let you voice it, and a lot of families don't want us to voice them. And we feel things, sometimes privately, but we avoid feeling. We try to avoid feeling the negative thing. And I totally understand where you're coming from, because the more you avoid something that is negative in your life, the more you're repressing it, and it's going to come back as something.
I think voicing it is the first step, but feeling the feeling is what frees us from the negativity. Actually connecting to the negative emotion is how we release the negative emotion. In my book, the second chapter is about bringing the darkness to the light, bringing the painful feelings to the surface. And what I do is I quote the invitation poem by Oriah Mountain Dreamer. In one of the lines in the middle of her poem, and this is so key, this is so essential, because most people will blame their negative feelings on outside circumstances. Most people will blame their painful feelings on other people.
Oh, it's so much easier to have something to blame.
Yeah, game.
It's
but what
it releases our
correct. But what my book, What A Course in Miracles, encourages people to do, myself included, is to feel the feelings, take responsibility for the feelings. This is how we clear our channel, and this is how we're able to connect to the joy. So to go back to the invitation poem, in the middle line of her poem, she writes, I want to know if you can sit with pain, yours and mine, without hiding or fading or fixing it. I want to know if you can sit with pain, mine or your own, without feeling the need to hide it or fade it or fix it. So it's so important to take responsibility for that feeling and sit with it. And then once you do, on the next line, she writes, I want to know if you can dance with joy, if you can allow the ecstasy to fill you from the tips of your fingers to the bottom of your toes, without cautioning us to be careful, to be realistic, to remember the limitations of being human. So a primary step that's so important before we're able to access that joy is to be able to take responsibility for that negative feeling. And ultimately what I do, especially since I've been studying A Course in Miracles, is give it to God,
Yeah. And, as you're talking, I'm thinking like this is something everyone has done or needs to do when we're dealing with grief. Unfortunately, we all have lost someone in our life. So like having to sit with that pain and not be able to fix it, because that's something you can't fix. And it's something that we have to come to accept, and we have to honor that we grieve. So I can see like right where you're saying, how you have to go right there and feel the negative, and then the joy does come, because how many times have we sat there to, mourn someone, and then all of a sudden a great memory comes to mind, or, something that just does bring joy, whether it's something that you've experienced in the past or in the present moment. Angels come into our lives, and we just get those God wink moments. So yeah, it's really wonderful. Now, when you, I know you didn't write this book till 5 years after your suicide attempt, but what prompted you to say, I need to write a book. I need to write a book about my story. I need to write a book about how I got through this dark time.
Well, I always felt like I had a book in me. Once I found the only book that could ever make me happy, the only philosophy. It's a spiritual, metaphysical, technically a philosophy. For me, it's a truth. But once I found A Course in Miracles, and I realized how much peace, love, joy, and happiness this could bring to my mind, I knew I had a story in me to write.
Yeah.
So, I found A Course in Miracles actually 5 years after my suicide attempts. I found A Course in Miracles at a Marianne Williamson lecture in Manhattan.
Oh my gosh, there's a name blast from the past for me. Yeah.
Yep.
Marianne Williamson.
One of the most famous interpreters of A Course in Miracles. And I remember when I sat down and I listened to her speak, I had so many aha moments. I knew that this was my path to peace, love, joy, and happiness. When a person picks up the text of A Course in Miracles, it's written in Shakespeare, the same language as William Shakespeare wrote. Mm-hmm. It's called iambic pentameter. So it's very difficult to understand. So in the beginning, I really needed Marianne Williamson to explain to me what A Course in Miracles was saying. In the introduction of A Course in Miracles, it says, "Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God." And what that means is the only thing that's real is the love. Mm-hmm. Expressing love extending love is the only thing that's going to make us happy. Where growing up in the traditional Christian culture, I learned about heaven and hell. I learned about God and the devil. A Course in Miracles does talk about love and fear, but it teaches that love is all that's real. Yes. When we're in a state of fear, we're actually living an illusion, like it's not real.
Yeah.
So it's similar to Christianity, and I believe in the Bible, but for me, it brings it to a deeper level.
Yeah, and that's we all have to find the book, that speaks to us. And, I've been a teacher of religious education in the Catholic Church and confirmation with the kids and teaching them what the gift of the Holy Spirit is, and hearing the Holy Spirit. And one of my main goals is always to say to them, like, if you have a thought or if you have a communication with God that is telling you to hurt yourself or someone else, that's not God. That's where you do need to get interference. You need someone to help, because God is only going to talk to you about love. He's only going to talk to you about things that are going to make the world a better place, and it's always going to be in love. Mm-hmm. So, taking a voice that's saying, harm yourself or harm someone. No. Like, we are all gifts. We are all placed here for a specific reason on earth, and He will determine our time, not us. Mm-hmm. So, it is very important to understand that we are here to not only have joy, but to bring joy to others. Mm-hmm. Writing, we're gonna dive into the writing of the book, because someone out there has a story, whether they're a survivor of suicide or a survivor of that dark night of the soul, and saying, okay, I'd like to share my story, like how I got through that time. How did you write this book? Did you sit down and, binge write it in a day? Did you do an outline to know what you were going to share? This is always like the fun part of talking to a writer.
Well, my story is unique.
Yeah.
I had a friend of mine who had written a couple of books, and she told me that I should just sit down, start writing, and all of a sudden the words would flow, tears would come to my eyes, and the writing would just become natural for me.
Yeah.
That's what she told me would happen. So that's what I did. I remember sitting down at a desk. I started writing. I never really felt the flow. I never really broke into tears. It was a bit of a struggle, but I did write. And then I brought my writing to a writer's group, and I received a lot of critical feedback. Ooh. So I said, okay, maybe I need to get a support system to write this book.
That writer's group was not a good support system, because you're not, no critics. We don't want critics, especially when you're putting the words on the page for the first time. It's, we want to find out like what's working and what we want to hear more of.
That's right, Angela. So what I did is I hired a coach. Okay. And the coach really helped me articulate the thoughts that I wanted to get on the pages of my book. And I did hire a few coaches to help me with the writing process. And it was really just a wonderful experience. I mean, the book took me over 10 years to write. I went through spurts with my writing, but I think that through the writing process, I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about A Course in Miracles, and it was a wonderful experience.
So, and you know, for writers to hear someone say, "Oh, it took 10 years to write a book," it's very normal. I mean, it's sad that it can be that normal. I mean, one book I wrote in 9.5 hours, binge wrote. I have one I did in about 2 weeks with about a year of research, and then I have another one that literally took about 25 years. So it's like, okay, how does each process work, and why does it take that long? And I can see, you sit down to write, and sometimes you want the pen just to flow, and some days it may flow, but it may not be what you wanted in that book. So you kind of tuck it aside and, trying to find time. I mean, we work, we have lives, it's not like we have time to just sit and do that. But you were able to get these little, I'm going to call them like pockets or, each chapters, and then bring them to a coach who can help you to organize the order it goes in.
Correct.
So she helped you. I say she because, I always want to think it's women helping women, but, men, whoever the coach is, helping you to put your chapters in order, but then also going through the line edits to make sure, it sounds silly to say the spell correct, but just really the font, the tenses of the words and things.
Right. Well, I had a few different coaches, and then I did work with an editor at the end to make sure that all the grammar was correct and the punctuality was proper. And the editor that I used, she was amazing. Peg Daisley, her name was. Amazing editor.
Shout out to Peg Daisley.
Yeah.
So when you were writing, do you handwrite and then you type it in?
When I wrote on my computer.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And you've taken this book, your Surrender to Joy, and you've incorporated the Course of Miracles into doing public talks, because you are doing
Correct.
speaking events, whether some are in person, some are on I'm going to say Zooms or your website.
Correct.
And how did that transform? Because it's like a lot of writers who just think, oh, I'm just going to write one book. All of a sudden, it evolves into something else. I've had people who it's evolved into a podcast. It's evolved into a movie. It's, all these different roads. So how did you evolve into being a public speaker about this?
Well, I am in a chat room now. It's called Gather for A Course in Miracles. And I speak twice a week on A Course in Miracles and on my book. And it's just really wonderful because I truly believe that we learn what we teach. So as I teach A Course in Miracles, I embody the concepts within myself. And I've done numerous podcasts with other hosts
from a very impressive website.
Oh, thank you. From all over the world. It's amazing what technology can do for us now. India, Africa, either California. So that's a lot of fun when I do the podcast. I'm a guest. I'm not a host yet, like yourself. But
it's easier to be a host because you can just ask questions. I think, because I just want to know everything. I'm so curious. It's like, how did you do this? How did you write this? How did you become this public speaker? It's so eye-opening, and it's so just inspiring to see people succeed in a way that they didn't know their life was going to be.
Exactly. A lot of my book was, challenging to get everything in the right order, even though it was inspiring. It was a wonderful, wonderful process. In the introduction, the first paragraph of my introduction did get channeled to me, I believe, and it just really lays a framework for everything that I write about, and it also basically is analogous to the foundation of A Course in Miracles. And if I can recite that really quickly.
I was like, can you recite it or read it? Yeah. I'm like, oh, she's got it.
So, and what I write is my passion is God. God is love and joy and beauty. He is all that is good in the world. Everything else is our own miscreation. When we are filled with joy, we are connected to God. When we are not joyful, we have lost our connection to all that is real. This is my message. It can be clarified with 3 simple words: surrender to joy. There is nothing to find. All we need to do is surrender. And what I write about is I write about how that joy that we are all searching for in the world does not exist in the world. It exists within us. We have to find the joy within us first in order to go into the world and extend that love and joy to other people. We can't look to the world to complete us in any way. And that is such an important lesson. And that is a foundational concept that I have learned from A Course in Miracles. You know, there were many reasons that I attempted suicide when I was 20 years old, 40 years ago. You know, I mean, one was, as I explained earlier, I was bullied. Another was I was abused by, it was a dysfunctional home environment. I was abused by my father. Another one was I felt so disconnected that I looked to the world to complete me. You know, what I at the age of 20, I thought to myself, if only I could be a fashion model, if I could look as good as all those girls on the front cover of the magazines look, then I would feel good about myself. So I had a worldly goal. My goal was to become a fashion model. So I actually got plastic surgery, rhinoplasty, breast augmentation, you know, and then I took a lot of glamorous pictures. Then I took the pictures around to the different modeling agencies in Boston. I got the top Boston modeling agency, Maggie Inc., to accept me, and I achieved my worldly goal. And I thought that if I achieved something in the world, it would make me happy. But after I got everything that I wanted in the world, I still felt as disconnected and lonely and stressed out on the inside. And that's when I became hopeless. And that's when I tried to kill myself. You know, and I think that's a lesson. I mean, everything in life is a lesson or a blessing. And the lessons, you know, are there to teach us. And what I learned from that is such an important lesson that nothing from the world can ever make us happy. You know, my goal was to become a model. That didn't make me happy. Everyone has a different external goal, whether it's a certain amount of money, a job, a romantic partner. But we need to remember that the only thing that can sustain us is finding the joy on the inside and connecting to God, which is that entity of unconditional love first, and then going into the world from a place of fullness and abundance, not from a place of lack.
Wow, that was amazing. I took all of those words in, and it's so true because, I mean, for me, I believe this. As I have said, I'm Christian. I grew up a Catholic, and, you know, it's like knowing that there is something greater than us, you know, call it God, call it the universe, call it that energy, I mean, the Holy Spirit, surrendering it to them, you know, surrendering it really can make you feel more empowered. You know, I mean, it's kind of awkward how it's giving your power away, but it's making you feel empowered. And, you know, you're right. So many people, and I mean, we're all guilty of it, you know, looking for the world to, you know, make us happy. Like, oh, if I get 10,000 subscribers, I'll be happier, you know, or if I, you know, get a job, you know, all these like goals. But it's like, well, no, being simple and just knowing that you're here on earth and, you know, that God has a purpose for you, it has to be, you know, something that just brings you joy in itself. And I kudos to you for for surviving and not succeeding with your suicide, because here you've had 40 plus years. You have a long life. You have a long life and a big message. And, you know, smiling and, you know, just your smile alone lights up the room so that, you know, it just does bring joy to others.
Yeah, I'm so glad those suicide attempts did not work. I mean, basically, what happened way back then, and I write about this in my book, is I ingested 6 bottles of sleeping pills both times. The first time, my mother drove me to the hospital. The second time, my father drove me to the hospital. Both times, they were able to pump my stomach, and there was no physical repercussions. I've learned a lot since then. One major realization that I had is that I didn't really want to die. I just wanted to kill the pain. And in order to eradicate the pain, get beyond the pain, I needed to allow myself to feel the pain. Because only by taking responsibility for the pain can we release the pain.
Yeah, through my writing and through my own spiritual gifts, I have had communication with people who have unfortunately committed suicide. And the one thing that I have, kind of, and the word channel, just messages that come through me on the pages, if only they waited a minute. It's like, if only I waited a minute or an hour or a day, things would have been different, because it doesn't change the situation. Like, if we think it's hard to change our pain in body, it's much harder to try to fix our pain without a body. So it's like we get one chance to live our life in this body, and we should take it for as long as we can. And just, when we have those dark moments, just give it a minute, give it a day, go to sleep, take a nap, without the sleeping pills, and wake up, and it's a new day, and there's new ways to seek for help. And, I think it's a big lesson if anyone out there, is contemplating or ever even had the thoughts of suicide, like, get some help, and just try to find the pockets of joy in your life, because they're there. And when you're having that dark time, I am hopeful to put out a book with all these little writings that I have, just to kind of help others who have dealt with someone who has committed suicide, to realize, the pain and suffering for them, I mean, the remorse is huge, and when you survive it and when you just wait a minute, the gift of living is even greater.
Pray, I would say pray. That's really important. Give it to God. Surrender. Allow Him to help us work our way through. And the dark night of the soul. I mean, we all experience dark nights of the soul. And I've experienced many in the course of this lifetime. But I've noticed that my periods of the greatest joy come after the dark night of the soul, when I give those feelings to God. I mean, I think when we are triggered in life, whether it's mild or major, these are opportunities for us to learn. These are opportunities for us to grow, because we're basically bringing the darkness in our unconscious mind so we can heal them. And this is what cleanses our channel. So I think the darkest night of the soul can be the chances for the greatest awakening. I think that can happen, for all of us, because triggers in life are opportunities for us to learn and for us to grow. I have this other phrase that I really like saying, we don't grow despite the challenges that we encounter in life. It's not despite the challenges, it's because of the challenges. So without these challenges,
I always say, don't give me so many.
Right, without these challenges, we wouldn't grow to be all that we can be. We wouldn't grow up to our fullest potential. So thank God for the challenges. Thank God for the triggers.
So, Susan Michel, where can people get your book? Where can they find out more information about you? And, tell them how they can read your book. Go read it.
Yeah, my book is Surrender to Joy, From Suicide to Serenity. It is available on Amazon. My website is surrendertojoy.net. There's a link to buy my book on my website, www.surrendertojoy.net.
Very nice. Thank you so much for
Thank
coming
you.
in. This
Thank
was
you.
wonderful.
It was
Thank you so
wonderful.
much. Oh, I thank you, the audience, for tuning in and listening to this episode. You know, I mean, some writers, especially when they're writing their own memoirs, and it has a lesson that, you know, a blessing that we can learn from is really important. And, you know, I always give you a writing prompt. And for those who aren't even writers, this might be something you just might want to meditate on. But for writers, sometimes we need to see it on a page. So, you know, today our writing prompt is going to be a little dark. I want you to write about a dark night of the soul. You know, talk about some time in your life where, you know, perhaps you found a turning point, you know, like, you know, what was going on in your life? You know, for me, you know, I went through closing my flower shop. It was very dark soul. I loved my business. I was there 33 years. So to talk about like the feelings I had then, and then, you know, trying to find the pockets of joy in them, you know, that is exactly what Susan Michel is talking about. You know, we have sadness in our life that we have to accept and we have to move on from and still accept it in our life, but to remember the good times too. So that's our prompt today, is to talk about that dark night of the soul, that dark time in your life that, you know, was really kind of sad that you had to accept. And, you know, write about it, see where it goes from there. And until next time, keep binge watching all these shows and subscribe on Apple, Amazon, YouTube, whatever. And thank you so much for tuning into yWrite. I'm your host, Angela Grout. See you next time.